What if I told you that Steve Jobs, the genius behind Apple, wasn't driven by passion, vision, or success? The truth is far more shocking. That Steve Jobs' billion-dollar empire was built on a deep, paralyzing fear, one that haunted him for decades, shaping every decision he made. And what if I told you that this fear was so powerful, it made him take insane risks, destroy relationships, and push his companies and himself beyond the brink of failure? Steve Jobs didn't exactly have the luxury of an easy path to success. His rise to the top wasn't just about innovation and genius. There was something deeper, something personal that fueled his relentless drive. That something was fear. But not the kind of fear you might be thinking of. This fear wasn't the fear of failure. It wasn't the fear of losing. It was a fear of being forgotten. A fear of living a life without meaning. Steve Jobs grew up in California, in a time when technology was just beginning to take off. He wasn't born into wealth or privilege, but rather to two young parents who, as it turned out, gave him up for adoption. This, in itself, could have made him feel insignificant, and maybe it did, in ways he never spoke about. Jobs wasn't just searching for success, he was searching for a purpose. He was afraid of disappearing into the background, of never making an impact. And that fear, it never left him. Steve Jobs was obsessed with the idea of leaving behind something that mattered, something that would stand the test of time. He often spoke about the fact that life is short, and the last thing he wanted was to waste his time on things that wouldn't leave a lasting mark. In fact, Jobs said once, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do." This wasn't just motivational speak. It was a man driven by the urgency of his own mortality. His fear wasn't just that he might fail, it was that he might never really matter. Think about that for a second. This was a man who feared irrelevance. Not just failure, not just losing money, but disappearing into the abyss of time. And that fear was so intense, it drove him to do things that, at the time, people thought were crazy. Think back to the early days of Apple. Jobs didn't just want to make computers. He wanted to make products that would change the world. He wasn't satisfied with just being a part of the tech industry. He wanted to revolutionize it. But more than that, he wanted to revolutionize how we, as people, interacted with technology. And that, right there, was driven by a fear of being forgotten. Jobs took a huge gamble with the Macintosh, an entirely new way to think about personal computing. But here's the kicker. It didn't exactly work out the way he planned. Apple almost went under. Jobs was pushed out of his own company, a company he had founded with everything he had. Imagine being told by the people you trusted, the people who once believed in your vision, that you're not needed anymore. But what happened next? Instead of crumbling, instead of accepting that defeat, Jobs took that pain, that feeling of being cast aside, and turned it into pure fuel for his fire. That fear of being irrelevant, that fear of fading away, became his motivation. He started a new company, NEXT, and though it wasn't an immediate success, it was the very thing that would help bring him back to Apple years later. Many people forget that Steve Jobs didn't just build Apple, he was also behind Pixar. At the time, it wasn't just about making a cool new animation studio. It was about reinventing an industry. Jobs saw that the future of entertainment was going to be digital, and he wasn't about to sit back and watch it happen. He poured everything into Pixar, and eventually, it paid off in a way that no one could have predicted. Pixar became a powerhouse, eventually selling to Disney for billions. But the real comeback was yet to come. In 1996, Jobs returned to Apple, and this time, everything changed. Jobs didn't just take the reins, he took over the entire direction of the company. The iMac, iTunes, the iPhone, all of these were born from that same fear. The fear of being irrelevant. The fear of wasting his time. He wasn't just designing products, he was building an empire. He was crafting a legacy. Then came the iPhone. Let's pause here for a second. The iPhone wasn't just another phone. It was a revolution. It was the product that changed the way we communicate, work, play, and live. And guess what? Jobs didn't just launch a phone. He launched an idea, an experience. He created something that would go down in history as one of the most groundbreaking innovations of all time. And all of it came from that one driving fear. What if I'm forgotten? What if none of this matters? That fear pushed him to constantly innovate. It kept him up at night, asking, what's next? Every product he created was a way to ensure that the world wouldn't forget his name. And when he passed away, he left behind a legacy that was so powerful, it continues to shape the world today.